Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for joining us. I'm Amber Hillis Parker, and my presentation today is on activating ancestral wisdom and values in business today. So I just want this to be a conversation. I want us to get to know each other. So if you guys can put on your cameras, because I'd love to see your beautiful faces. Also, I'll be giving away 2 Amazon cards at the end of this. So for the people that are participating, those Amazon cards are up for grabs. I'm going to be asking several questions. Your response in the chat would be great if you feel like you would like to share. And then we'll have some time at the end where we can kind of go deeper into some items if you'd like to. So thank you those who put on your camera. It's great seeing you. So I would like to start off and tell you a little story. So long before Hillis Parker and Associates was established to help small business owners, there was a girl who lived in a small rural town on the Navajo Nation. Her name was Amber. Amber was one of 4 children to Clyde Hillis. Clyde was a Vietnam vet, a Purple Heart recipient, and an entrepreneur. Growing up, Amber watched her father work day in and day out to build his business on the reservation without much support or outside resources. He was a highly skilled electrician, and he believed it was his duty and privilege to bring his knowledge and much needed skill set back to the reservation to serve his people. In the best effort, Amber's dad had to close his business after years of hard work. When Amber had asked her dad what had happened, he cited the one resource he needed was financial knowledge, and that he wished he had a good CPA on his side. Unknown to each of them, that day, a seed was planted. That was Amber's first experience of seeing small business owners like her dad struggle when it came to financial knowledge. So, how many of you have heard a similar story where you have a highly skilled entrepreneur that is struggling to keep their business afloat? How many of you have heard, yes, thank you, Naomi. How many of you have heard or been taught that go off and get your education and come back and bring it to your people and help them? It's a very similar story that we all hear of people going off the reservation, bringing their skill set back. Some people are more successful than others. And in this case, Clyde wasn't. So that little girl was me 30 years ago. So let me properly introduce myself. Yat Ed, She'e Amber Hillis Parker Yinisha, She'e County Michelin. Hanagahni, Bashish Chin Akadina, Dashiche, Tutsotni Dashinella. Hello, everyone. I'm Amber Hillis Parker. I'm of the Towering House people, born for the one who walks around. I'm born and raised on the Navajo Nation, Fort Defiance to be specific. I'm a certified public accountant licensed in New Mexico, and I have over a decade experience in the accounting field, managing financials from 2 million to 132 million. I'm a wife, I'm also a girl mom, and the story about my dad, as mentioned, is a very common story, and one that one of the reasons why I got into the work that I do today, and one of the reasons why I developed Hillis Parker and Associates. So a little bit about our firm. So we're an Indigenous woman-owned accounting firm. We provide bookkeeping, accounting, and advisory services to Indigenous entrepreneurs and nonprofits. We're based in New Mexico, but we provide services across the US. We specialize in mapping your unique path to money freedom, wealth creation, and financial knowledge. We are in the process of launching Her CPA, which is our sister company that focuses on supporting women entrepreneurs. So today I want to ask you several questions. And for this one, if you feel called to, please put it in the chat box. But the first question that I really want you to think about is the question of, does your Native American heritage include a lineage of entrepreneurs? So go ahead, write yes or no. So do you believe that your Native American heritage, that there's entrepreneurs in with your ancestors? So yes, seeing a lot of yeses, great. Thank you for the interaction. Yeah, so next question that I'd love to ask you is, yes, basket makers, bread makers, artists, yes, awesome. Next question I'd like to ask you is whether you answered yes or no. Do you feel like it's provided you an advantage or disadvantage? So if you're called to put that in the chat, go ahead and put that in there. So based on your belief, if you came from entrepreneurs, do you believe there's an advantage or disadvantage? Thank you, Anthony. So an advantage. Awesome, thank you guys. So I'd like to take this time and introduce you guys, or ask another question and ask you, if I stated you hail from a lineage renowned for its entrepreneurial spirit, how might that change your confidence? Or how might that change your impact on your approach to business? So if you knew without a doubt, that you come from a lineage of renowned entrepreneurs, how does that change your confidence in your approach to business? So just sit right now and think about that. And how does it change? Does it impact you? Does it not? Does it make you feel stronger when it comes to your approach to business? So I want to take this time and introduce you to my great grandparents. So on the left is my maternal great grandparents, the Brewster family, and they were from Hogback, New Mexico. And my Hillis family on my paternal side is from Cornfields, Arizona. Is anyone from Hogback or Cornfields? Anyone here? Yes, so they're little towns, but very close to where I currently live. So my maternal great grandparents, my grandmother's name was Francine and my grandpa's name was David Brewster. They were farmers. They had cattle, they had sheep, they grew corn and squash and melons. And what was really amazing when I found this out was they actually had a peach orchard. And people, my grandma has told me that people all over, the reservation would come and buy peaches from her dad. And the peaches were so huge, they were bigger than softballs, like the size of that. Also, my grandma has told us stories about how when my grandparents would go herd the sheep, that what they would do is they would hide their money in cans around the places that they would go and herd sheep. So to this day, there might be money out there. Some people have tried looking for it, but have been unsuccessful with that. But and I really didn't even know that orchards were like in Hogback, Shiprock area. So that was really interesting for me to find out there. My paternal great grandparents, the Hillises, so my great grandparents, my grandpa, he was Clyde Hillis and his wife was Hospa Hillis. So they were in Cornfields, Arizona. They were also farmers. They had sheep. They grew squash, melon, corn. And I'm told that my grandfather was such a kind man, and that he would help his community in any way that he could. And that my grandma had a big heart as well. And I don't know if you can tell from this picture, but I'm told that they're both very tall. And if any of you guys have met me in person, I'm a little bit taller than probably most. So I think that I may have gotten my height from them. So, but it's really interesting when I started learning about them, and just to see their heart and how they would have an abundance of vegetables, and how they would store this, and how they would help the community when it came time that the community did need help. So I have a question. Do any of you want to share like the occupations of your great grandparents? Maybe some of you know, some of you may not know. If you want to put that in the chat box, that would be great. What could be a possibility? So we have a weaver, definitely. We have a lot of artists, right? We also have come from ancestors that were probably hunters, right? Or they were probably farmers or fishermen, fisherwomen. We also have if they were herbalists or gatherers of food. A lot of people had ancestors that were shaman or medicine man, medicine women. We have artists. We have people that would make rugs or do some sort of silversmith, or even working with hides and having items from that. And also the people that would go and have sheep, they also were able to shear their sheep and participate in trade, selling the wool and that. Also builders, and they were able to build these beautiful buildings, or even different homes in their community. And then we have people that were storytellers that really stuck with communicating the wisdom that has been taught over the course of the years. So we have a lot of people even too working on railroads, or were missionaries, farmers, carpenters. So all of our grandparents had these amazing occupations. And what's really amazing about this, when I sit back and I think about this, is in all of these aspects, they almost were running a family business. They were entrepreneurs. They were participating in trade. And so when I hear fishermen and artists and farmers, for me as an accountant, where this really takes me is back to, you guessed it, a balance sheet. How many of you guys know what a balance sheet is? So put a 1 if you know what a balance sheet is. If not, it's okay, I'll go through it quickly. So a balance sheet shows you your assets, your liabilities, and your equity. Basically, your assets are items of value that the business owes. Liabilities is what the business owes to other people. And equity is how much of the company the owner owes, right? So when I was thinking about this, like, wow, they were really entrepreneurs. And how would this look? How would a balance sheet look like to them? So a lot of times what we see with people when it comes to assets, we see like the money in the bank. They might have a checking account. They might have a savings. They have some sort of asset, right? So when I think about my great grandparents and what that might look for them, I think about maybe the cash that they have, the money that they have in their pocket. I think about my grandparents that would go and bury the money, right? So that's an asset too. And grandma's a saver. So grandma always has a stash of money somewhere. No one knows about that too. So when I think of their assets, I think about how that might look for them. And also, I think about their inventory. So nowadays, when we have inventory, you might be selling t-shirts, or you might be selling your rugs, or you might be selling some sort of product. So for them, their sheep or their cattle could be looked at as assets. The corn, the squash, the fruit could be looked at as inventory, the food storage, or even the seeds. And if your grandma was a weaver, there was times that she would weave rugs and have that there so that when it came time that she could trade those would also be looked at as an asset. And I think about what machinery or equipment they might have had. Today, we might look at machinery and equipment such as, the vehicle that you use, if you have a trailer, if you have a computer, different things like that. But for them, their machinery and equipment might have been their horses, right? Or they might have had a wagon. And so when we look at that, maybe their wagon's a little bit older, and that's why they had accumulated depreciation, where they're really saying, hey, the wagon's not really, each year it starts breaking down, so it's really not worth that much there. And then we start looking at liabilities. What is maybe they have a commitment to pay someone for something, so they have an accounts payable. Or maybe they made a pledge to help the community, and so they have that liability on their books. And you know what? That darn wagon, those parts were so expensive, and now they have a liability still out for that. When I think about their equity, I think about the investments that they have in their family business. So every time that grandma and grandpa are going out and putting money in the cans when they go and herd the sheep, and every time they pull the money out, looking at it as owners distributions or owners investments. And all the purpose of what they do is really to be able to provide for their family. So all of these aspects, right? Their sheep, their cattle, those are all things that we're going to bring resources to them. And so in addition to a balance sheet, I also think of an income statement, right? So how did they go about running their family in their business and being able to provide for them? So I think of the income statement or the profit and loss. So revenue, when I think about revenue or income, is the money coming in, and expenses, any cost that it took to produce that income. So when I look at these here, I think about, well, what would income be to them? So maybe they sold some sheep or their cattle, and that's funds coming in, or they sold their corn, squash, or fruit, or they sold some of their storage, their seeds, their rugs. Maybe they can consult on an area that they bring in expertise to. I think about the labor costs that they might have had. Sometimes I hear stories about different family members coming during different times to be able to help with their family, whether that be with the cattle during a certain time or harvesting. So they could have had costs related to labor, or even if, nowadays, when they're growing alfalfa and it doesn't grow, then we have to go and purchase that animal food from someone else. They could have had other expenses, like employee training or, traveling costs. And they had to rent that wagon. So now they have a rental fee there. But I think about all these different ways of how they would have kept track of whether or not they could say that they were bringing in more funds than what they had going out. So my question to you is, how many of you guys actively look at your profit and loss today? How many of you have a profit and loss for July and feel very confident in those numbers? If you feel very confident, go ahead and put a 1 in there. How many of you feel very confident when it comes to knowing what income or revenue you generated for July? How many of you feel very confident about the profit or the net income that you have? Do you know the difference between income and profit, revenue and profit? Do you have financial statements that can tell you the story of how your business is doing so far in 2023? Those are some really big questions there. And a lot of times when it comes to financial statements, it's a very scary subject. So I really urge you guys, if the sound of a balance sheet or an income statement, you're unsure whether or not you have one, or you don't know whether or not you have a profit so far in July, reach out to us. We can definitely help you with that. So going back to our ancestors, not only do I see that they had a balance sheet and an income statement, I would even say the fact that they had a business plan. So they knew so many aspects of the organization or the family business that they were running. They knew the core purpose. They knew the specific goals they were aiming for. They knew the nature of the business. They knew who their customers were when they would buy. They knew their strengths and their weaknesses. They also knew their products and their services and what they should sell. They also had like trademarks and patents. When you look at weavers and the different weaves that they had done throughout, depending on the location, it's almost like a patent or a trademark specific to that location. So you can tell where weavers came from by the design of the rugs. And you know that they absolutely had an operations plan. And that operations plan usually started first thing in the morning before the sun came up with a little bit of prayer and corn pollen, right? They knew who their vendors were. They knew how much inventory they had. They knew how long it took to travel to sell goods or to pick up goods. And you know for a fact they had a strong management team. Our grandparents ran a very tight ship, but also with that, they taught us knowledge during the times that we would go out and work with them. So just even them teaching that to their children and it going down from generation to generation. Also, they knew every aspect of the family business. And why did they know this? Because they had to survive through winters. They had to survive through the hot summers or droughts. All aspects of a business they had, and they were very knowledgeable of what was going to bring them a big yield of crops or what wasn't. So how many of you guys have a business plan today? How many of you guys are reevaluating that business plan? A lot of times we do the business plan so we can become a priority one vendor on the Navajo Nation, or because we need to have it for a loan or different things like that. Awesome, you guys. I'm glad you guys have a business plan, but how many times are we going back and reevaluating that and saying whether or not we're on target, whether we're not? So if you guys are not doing that, I really encourage you to go back and look at your business plan and see whether or not you align with that, what items you need to look at. Your business plan is really like your roadmap. So I have this amazing question here. So we learned about how our ancestors had these family businesses or had an entrepreneurial spirit. But what mindset do you think that they might have had? I would love to hear your comments in here. What mindset do you think that our ancestors had to have in order to be able to survive through winters or those hot summers? What are some items? Go ahead and put that in the chat box if you'd like to contribute. So I would like to say that they might have had a growth mindset. So they viewed challenges as opportunities rather than obstacles. They were resilient, ability to bounce back from failures or learn from mistakes. I see that they were hustlers and they were productive and they were disciplined. Absolutely. How about they were adaptable? They were flexible and willing to pivot when required. How about visionary thinking? Having a clear vision of what they wanted to achieve. There was risk tolerance, right? Not being reckless, but being comfortable with the uncertainties. They had perseverance. So when they were facing challenges, they were willing to put in the effort and go for the long haul. They were continuous learners, they were curious and always open to learning new things. They were self-disciplined. They managed their time, their resources, and energy. How many times have we gone to our grandparents and we have to get so much done because there's no electricity there, or we have to manage our water because there's no running water there? Can you just imagine the self-discipline that they had? How about they were decisive? They were able to make informed decisions and do it promptly. They were network oriented. They were building and maintaining relationships both for support and opportunity. They were customer focused, so understanding and valuing the customer, so listening to their customers, hearing their feedback. Also, they were optimistic, so seeing the positive in a situation. And man, talk about intrinsic motivation. So when people have intrinsic motivation, they're passionate about the work, the desire to solve a problem, or wanting to make a difference. That, they didn't have big houses or cars, the desire to do that, but the desire came to provide for their family or to solve a problem to help their community. They were problem solving. They had a problem solving ability, so ability to solve problems and think about it creatively and have critical thinking with that. They were ethical in the way that they operated. They built trust. They operated with honesty, transparency, and ethical integrity. So which of these mindsets do you see with your parents, your grandparents, your parents? Which of those values do you see in yourself, or which one of these resonates with you? I think for me, the intrinsic motivation was one that sticks with me, because I feel like that's where a lot of my heart comes from, is wanting to make a difference and use our skill sets with that. So we talked about our ancestors, and we said, they had this mindset and they had this ability to look at things. And just because our ancestors didn't use words like balance sheet, income statements, assets, liabilities, equity, revenue, risk tolerance, pricing strategies, they had this remarkable innate way of knowing how to operate, how to be successful in these areas. They were remarkable entrepreneurs. And how do I know that? I know that for a fact because we are all here today. And we simply just called it our way of life. We didn't put these special names there. There wasn't these names when back in their day. We just called it our way of life, the way that we went about, the way that we provided for our family. So let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this, but let me state it a little bit different. So now that you know you are a direct descendant from a lineage known for its entrepreneurial spirit, how does this change? How does this influence your confidence? How does this impact your business? Take that. Think about it. Think about what our ancestors had to go through. They didn't have these fancy names for what they called life. But you have that. You have that in you. You come from this line of successful entrepreneurs. We just called it the way of life and how we did things back then. So does that make you feel different? Does that give you a sense of pride or boost your confidence? Do you think you can look at your business different? Well, you show up in your business different. I really challenge you guys to take some time and think about this after our conversation. So today, when I interact with individuals, I see that they doubt this innate wisdom and values that's in all of us. This wisdom that comes from our ancestors, this natural wisdom of entrepreneurship coming from this family that's in us. And I really encourage you guys to think about who our family is and where we come from, and that we're here for a reason. So how do we move away from the doubt, and how can we start inputting items, putting steps back into being more community oriented? And how do we move away from this doubt? Are there simple steps that we could do? So let's talk about some simple, impactful steps that we could implement. And whether this is implementing within your business or within your family, within your community. But I think that these items are very simple ones that we could do. And if we were to catch on to these items, we really could make a positive change. So the first one I want to talk about is sourcing and supporting Native businesses, right? We talk about this a lot, about supporting Native businesses or supporting small businesses, but let's look at it with our ancestors. They had full economies, prosperous economies based on the relationships supporting each other. Let's look at, not sure if many of you are familiar with the town of Gallup, New Mexico. How many of you guys are? If you are, put a 1. Any of my Gallup people? So I remember hearing that, yeah, a lot of people are 1s, right? So what happens the first of the month? What do you see? So anyone who's not familiar with Gallup, it's a central hub location for the surrounding reservation. So whenever the first of the month, you will see everyone there. Everyone's there buying their food, buying their groceries, going and, getting oil changes, everything. The economy that's in Gallup, it's so amazing. And what's so amazing about that is who supports that economy. Who supports it? Natives. That's natives that are supporting that economy. Can you imagine if we took an approach and made our own little Gallup where we supported each other, where we sourced and supported Native businesses? Can you imagine if we kept those dollars within the Indigenous community, the impact that that could have? Who wants to build a little Indigenous Gallup with me? So I really encourage you guys to think about that Gallup. One of the places, a lot of self-made millionaires supported by Native Americans. Let's talk about the Navajo word when we talk about kinship. Also, means relationships, showing love, compassion, kindness, generosity, peacefulness. What I see a lot with today and the mentality that really sticks out is having these relationships that are transactional based. I'm just having this conversation with you in order to make this transaction, make this sale. And the focus is about that transaction only, and not really going back to really learning who you're doing business with, not learning about what's their values, or genuinely caring about that, or understanding and providing mutual support. How would this look different if, when we interact within our businesses, the purpose was to build a relationship? And anyone who really is deep in business really understands that the core of what you do is based on relationships. and having that mutual trust and support there. So I really would challenge you guys, if you're in the business where it is more transactional, making it more relationship based. We have technology today where you can go and talk to anyone. Doesn't matter where you're at. That gives you the ability to showcase who you are, for people to let you in, to let people in, and for them to get to know you. So I challenge you guys to move away from transactional and just looking at what's in it for me, and looking more towards a win-win mentality and supporting each other. Let's talk about intergenerational knowledge sharing. When I was developing this, man, if we can get this portion, if we can implement this portion, it's so powerful. And we do it already. We do it. We share this intergenerational knowledge when it comes to our traditions, our prayers, our songs. But where do we see this when we're trying to transfer business knowledge? Where do we see this? We should put just as much effort into transferring, into sharing knowledge. And sharing knowledge is not just, to your kids or your nieces and nephews, but to your peers. It's so important, the power of a mastermind group, where you're able to get people of the same mindset to come in and to share knowledge, to share resources, to share, oh, this is how I did it. No, I suggest you do it this way. It's so important. Yes, mentorship. So we share traditional practices, prayers, but let's start sharing this knowledge that we have. And can you imagine if we went and not just shared from a cultural perception, but also sharing business knowledge, how that could even drive the economy? Can you imagine coming to a group and saying, this is what's in my heart, I want to start this business, and you have a group of people that are around you to support you and say, these are the steps that you need to take. But also, not just you learning that, but the wisdom that you pass down to your children. Can you imagine what it's like if your child comes to you when they're 15 years old and they say, hey, mom, dad, I want to do X, Y, Z. And you say, absolutely, these are the steps here. And we have to embrace both sides, embrace the side of tradition and bringing that in to your business, and not having just a profitable business, but also looking at the value-based business that has Indigenous values in there. How do we do this? I definitely saw mentorship in there. Also saw about apprenticeships. Why are we not doing apprenticeships within our own business? Why are we not making a bi-weekly mastermind where someone comes in and talks about the work that they do and is able to share that knowledge, where people don't have to go and spend time and resources trying to figure something out, where we can come together collectively and support each other? So I really challenge you to put together some information that you can share to the people that are starting off their business, to reach out to them. There's so many different programs out there that are looking at and aiming at this. A lot of stuff that this organization does is about sharing knowledge and bringing that to the forefront to Indigenous women entrepreneurs. Yes, future Native women leaders, absolutely. Let's talk about Indigenous representation. Oh, man. So let me ask you this question. In your career or your arena that you're in, have you seen another Native American woman in the same arena that you're in? If you have, please put a 1. If you haven't, put a 2. 1, awesome. We see a lot of 1s. So let me tell you my story. When I grew up, I didn't see other Native American business women. And even today, being a Navajo CPA, I believe there's less than 50 of us out there. The amount of CPAs in general for Native Americans is less than 0.1%. So not even 1% of the people that are CPAs are Native Americans, less than 1%. How many of us would have loved to been able to have, how many of us would have came into a career faster if we saw someone that looked like us doing what we wanted to do? Probably it would have changed the direction of some of our career paths. Also, having Indigenous representation also means that we have a seat at the decision-making table. It's so important that we have a voice in those discussions. Also, how many of us have gone off the reservation and people are so amazed that we're Native American? They don't think we exist, or they ask if we live in a teepee. Probably, majority of you guys have had a conversation like that before, but it's so important that we're in these arenas so that we can accurately portray who we are, and also to inspire the next generation. So I tell you guys, so each one of you have a skill set and a purpose that tugs at you. And whether or not you guys are actively pursuing that, I encourage you guys to put yourself in that arena, to use your skill set, to use your purpose. Because when you don't, it stops the flow of progression. So whether you're fearful of putting yourself out there, if you're fearful of starting your business, you know that you came from entrepreneurs that had nothing and made something. Feel the fear and do it still. You have so much support out there. So my question with you guys are, which one of these steps are ones that you can implement today? Could you start thinking about bringing on apprenticeships to your business? Do you feel like you could start looking, when you're looking for services, looking more for a Native business, or showing support with that? And supporting a Native business doesn't always come down to handing over money. It could just be promoting their Facebook page or their Instagram. It's about when there's an opportunity, when someone says, hey, I'm looking for a person that does XYZ, you speaking up and promoting that business. So I really challenge you to look at these areas, these 4 areas, these simple, very simple, but very impactful areas that you can start implementing, whether that's in your business or in your personal life. All right. Awesome. So I also want to talk about ancestral mindset and what aspects that still works for today. So I want you guys to be 100% honest, and I want you to go ahead and put a 1 if you've ever avoided something in your life. So have you avoided the gym, the dishes, the laundry, the dentist, shaving your legs, cleaning the house, whatever it may be, right? So a lot of us have avoided something when it comes to our life. And as entrepreneurs, you're the CEO, you're the CFO, you're the IT, you're HR, you're the service provider. And a lot of you guys in the room might also be moms, you might be daughters, you might be wives, right? You're handling so many different aspects of your life, trying to have harmony between your home life and your business. And there's a lot that you have on your plate. And a lot of times when in my business, when I meet people, I see that there's areas of avoidance when it comes to the business, right? Talked about how all these hats you're wearing. And one of the areas that I see so much of the time being pushed on the back burner is when it comes to their finances. And a lot of times when I work with individuals, they're just so overwhelmed when it comes to finances. You know, words like balance sheet and income statement, and oh my gosh, if I said taxes, right? Just kind of just make people just feel uneasy. And it's not just one tax. There's federal tax, there's state tax, there's Navajo Nation tax, there's all these taxes, right? And as business owners, we get so overwhelmed and we don't know what to do. And sometimes just not knowing what to do, we get stuck, we get paralyzed. And, you know, and at the same time, you're trying to provide a service or make a product that it's really hard to get to these other areas in your business. So I take this example. So what I see a lot is avoidance when it comes to financials in a business. And I give you this example of our grandparents. Do you think that when grandma and grandpa got up in the morning and they walked out the hogan and they're looking at their cornfield and they see all those weeds that start growing, do you think they walk out looking like this? Probably not, right? And they couldn't afford to do that. They had to approach or engage in the situation and start handling it. And why not? Because if they didn't, that means they wouldn't have a big yield of corn that year. So get to, even if you're just starting out, it's so important that you start working on the financial aspect of your business. And, you know, if you're in a situation where you feel that you haven't been successful or you haven't tried in the financial area, so working with a bookkeeper or accountant or CPA, and you don't have financial statements to tell you where you are in your business, I really encourage you to not feel embarrassed. It's dealing with the problem at hand. So if you're one of those people that are kind of stuck and don't know where to go, we can definitely help you. But I really encourage you not to have an avoidance mindset when it comes to that, and take an approach where if you don't know how to do it or you don't have time to do it, to partner with someone that can help you with that there. So talking about being engaged and approach. So grandma and grandpa didn't ignore the weeds in the yard. Also, when they came back, when they counted their sheep, they didn't go and say, oh, I'm missing 10, but it's okay, I'm just going to go back in the hogan. Nope, they went out there and they searched. So I really encourage you guys, if you need help in that area, we can definitely help you. The next thing I want to talk about is the perception or relationship of money when it comes to profit and wealth. And this is a place that I want to challenge you in what might have been a statement or how you grew up and what may have been said to you. I don't know about you guys, but when I grew up and what I heard, not just from my family, but from other families, is that we don't talk about money. We don't talk about money. We don't ask, we don't talk about money, right? How many of you guys have heard that before? Put a 1 in there, that you just don't talk about money. How many of you have heard that you only take what you need? If you've heard you only take what you need, nothing more, put a 2 in there. I really want to challenge these 2 statements that may have been told to you, because I don't think that that's really what they meant. And I really want to encourage you to see a different side of this. So another thing that I hear a lot is, especially when it comes to women entrepreneurs, what I hear is, I'm not trying to make a lot of money, or I'm not trying to be greedy. I'm not trying to. How many of you have been guilty of saying that, or have you heard that? Have you thought that before? I mean, I've even said that too, is I'm not trying to be greedy. I'm not trying to make a lot of money. But these are stories that have been given to us, and how we honor Mother Earth and not overtaking what she has. But let's talk about it in the perspective of what our grandparents might have thought of. So let's go back to the cornfields, right? So when your ancestors went and planted their crops, they went and planted, they went and did the yard work for it, and then it comes harvesting time, right? We can almost look at harvested corn as revenue or income for them. We can look at expenses such as like corn that they used on their family, or corn that they gave to the community, right? And what is left over? An abundance of corn, right? And in our business, what we call that today is what? Profit, right? We call it profit. So anytime that our ancestors had an abundance of a product or corn, what did they do with this? They went and used this and dried out the corn to have nashtiji, or they made kneel down bread, or they stored it, or they preserved the seeds with that. So when we say they had profit, right? They had an abundance with this. And what did they do with this? They saved it. They saved some. If a community member was in need, they went and were able to give that to them. What's so interesting when you have financial statements in your business, when you can see the balance sheet in your income statement, you can see whether or not you're profitable. And this is so powerful because now you have a roadmap on how to change behavior or what to do different in your business. It's amazing when I work with entrepreneurs where we can see what line of revenue is making them the most profit. And a lot of times it's always flip-flop from what they think it is. So in order to know how profitable you are, you need to have bookkeeping and accounting in place so that you can have these financial statements that give you real-time feedback on where you stand with business. I want to talk about the power of profit and abundance, right? When we say an abundance, it almost feels better than to say profit sometimes. But what's profit? Profit is so powerful. It can give you financial independence. Wow. Can you imagine that? Not having more than enough that you can pay your bills, you can help people. It gives you the ability to reinvest, not just in yourself, not just in your business, not just your family, but also your community. It gives you economic stability. It gives you the opportunity to look at new business ventures, or even better, to create employment opportunities. Also, to have positive social impact. How many of us support our local nonprofits? How many of us have gone and heard of a need in a community where you're able to give back in some capacity? Can you imagine you having excess abundance of profit that you're able to go and support these nonprofits, to support an organization that's so near and dear to your heart? And you know what's amazing about profit? It gives you confidence. Who here remembers their first sale? Anyone? Put a 1 if you remember your first sale. It's so nice for someone to confirm that your service or your product means something. And profit is even more. So when you set up your business where you can be profitable, it gives you confidence, and it gives you the ability to not just impact your family, but also your community. So today, whether or not you heard those two sayings of we don't talk about money, or Don't you only take just enough? Today, I'm giving you permission to make money. I'm giving you permission to know your value of your products or your service and to charge that. And I also encourage you, if you don't know whether or not you have a profit in your business, to reach out. We can help you with that. So a big word that I feel has been really showcased, maybe like in the past year or two, is wanting to have generational wealth, which I'm so happy that this language and this thought is coming out. And so when we think about profit puts you in a position to have a legacy of wealth. And we all know that women, especially women of color, have faced systematic barriers when it comes to wealth accumulation, right? We all know that. And that's something that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So can you imagine being able to leave a legacy? And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about property, intellectual property, talking about businesses. And what if we were to have this opportunity, to have this abundance of profit, to be able to get these assets and preserve them for our generation, having this wealth legacy paired with the intergenerational knowledge sharing? Can you imagine like the economic disruption that we could have towards social inequalities? Can you imagine you starting your business, going to your family and saying, hey, family, I have this yearning in my heart to do X, Y, Z. And they say, absolutely, here's $50,000. And this is how I'm going to work with you. You're going to work with uncle and your aunt. They're going to be your business consultants. They're going to tell you how to go about this. And we're also going to bring this person in and they're going to mentor you in this way, right? Can you imagine where your business would be today if you had that support there? So I challenge you guys. We talk about looking at the next generation. Why are we not having the same thought process when it comes to what we're leaving for our kids? But not just our kids, but looking at even taking like the mindset of the Iroquois when it came to 7 generations. And this is all built on profit, right? Having an excess, there's nothing wrong with that. And then preserving that and going and using the knowledge and sharing that. Can you imagine where we would be if we didn't, each time an entrepreneur came in and they didn't have to start from square one, where they actually started on step 10 as opposed to 1, how that would look different for us? So which of these items really do you believe is important and why? Do any of these here make you think different about your business? So ladies, we talked about a lot today. We talked about how now you come from remarkable entrepreneurs. We have simple steps that we can put into place, simple but impactful steps that we can put into place, not just in our business, but in our personal life too. We have the ability to support each other, to support Native businesses, to have our own miniature Gallup empire that we're having this ecosystem and supporting each other. You pair that with knowledge sharing, not just sharing to your peers, but to the next generation, and having that representation in the areas that we haven't had before, and knowing that there's nothing wrong with having an abundance, that profit actually changes lives. Profit gives you the ability to open up doors of opportunity that weren't there. Can you imagine being able to have all your grandkids, if they wanted to go to college, that's 100% paid for? Can you imagine having an excess that you could go and provide it to the communities. You hear someone who's lost their house or is going through a hardship, that you can go and have an impact with that. But also thinking about, how do we take this and not just think about, oh, I just need enough money to pay my rent or get through this month or get through this year, but having the mindset of, what do I need to do to align myself where I can not just set up my current generation, but for the generations to come. I really challenge you guys to think about this, and what do you have to do different? What can you do different today so that you're able to have this positive impact on the future generations? So I leave this with you guys today, that remember that the strength of generations flow within you. Our ancestors were resilient entrepreneurs, thriving traders, skilled negotiators, long before those terms even existed. Their legacy of success is in your veins. When you profit, it just doesn't benefit you. It benefits the community. It elevates your family. It's really truly a gift to your community, and it pays homage to those who came before you. Profit can reshape lives, open up doors of opportunity, and plant seeds of change. So I challenge you, if there's any self-doubt that you might have, to believe in your immense potential, to dream so big, so wild, that we honor those who came before us. So thank you guys. Yeah. So any questions? If you want to just introduce yourself and make your statement or your question, let's just have a conversation.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey, Angelica Vegas Speaks at 12 Squally Ups, Chad. Good day, my name's Angelica, and I'm from the Squally, and I come from the people of the river, people of the grass. I really love what you just talked about, and it just had me thinking a lot about just our tribal institution, and one thing that I was, that you really brought to mind is the 18 monies that our children get, and a different model that they could take with the mentors, tribes could be okay, you want this money, or it could be an option, right? You want this money, but there has to be that financial literacy and all those things. But it's what I really see a lot is a lot of fear, or people in positions of power ability to receive feedback or another way of doing things, and a lot of gatekeeping on our own. People are scared to that fear. There's a lot of fear in our people of it's. I think of that as the settler, the white supremacist mindset. So how do we fix that?
I think there has to be a lot of change that comes into place. And, I don't have an answer for everything, but if this has resonated with you, implement that change. How does it look? We talked about simple steps there, but also I think that there's a rising of a different consciousness that's here, where we're challenging those old views. And it is not just based on one person, but us collectively to come together and to support each other, right? Great organizations like Native Women Lead is amazing, right? Where else would we have this ability to have these conversations, but to support organizations like this? But, if it's an area that we want change, then we need to put ourselves in a position where we can help that change. Representation is so important. Great question. I wish I had a magic wand to do this. Yeah. So what other items? Anyone else want to? So thank you for sharing that. Anyone else want to share anything?
Hi, Amber. This is Tanya. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. Thank you for everything that you've said. It's really resonated deep within me. Yeah, I've been, well, good afternoon. My name Tanya and Shia. Twitch ni nishle kia ani bashichin nakai dana and dashache tachitni dashanala. So I own Canyon Deshay Tours, run canyon hiking and camping tours, and a lot of what you said has resonated within me. My great grandmother was a missionary, so she had that mindset of like money was the root of all evil. And I remember my grandmother telling me that one time she went to go visit her mom, and she found her burning her money, like because she only needed what she had to live on, and she used to get checks, and she found out that she was burning her money. And so so I grew up with professional working, grandparents who raised me, um, and it that was one thing that even though I I was able to ask for school clothes. That work ethic was instilled in me very young, where I had to find summer work to make money to buy my own school clothes for the school year and my own school supplies. So, I babysat a lot. Um, so I think that's one thing as a business owner that I struggle with is um, feeling that my team and my people it's trying to meet their needs more than actually my own personal wealth, as you said, because I on top of what I do, I also have a career, and it's a challenge. I really like the challenges that you put out there, which is really good. And I'm going to work on that and working on the mindset that I have of that not feeling guilty, because I have a tendency to donate and over donate and help people. And, I'm always thinking of ways that I can, with the business that I have, how I can help um, others and organizations. And so I want to thank you for bringing that perspective to the forefront. And I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but it's a challenge for me. But so thank you.
Well, thank you for your transparency. We appreciate that. And the work that we do, dealing with people and their business finances, it's a intimate relationship. We see a lot, and to work with people, talking about representation, when you guys hear CPA, you probably think, taxes, or you think of an older gentleman with a visor, with a pocket protector, right? And what's so unique about us is that we're different than that. We're a Native-owned business, and we handle our clients with care and compassion versus, mansplaining or talking down. We meet you where you're at. But one of the biggest areas, if anyone wants to go a little bit deeper, is looking at your relationship with money, and what are some of those money mindsets that you can work through. So absolutely, I think we all have some sort of mindset relationship with money that we all have to work through. So I encourage you guys, if that's an area that you see that you need help in, definitely, I know that we have several Native women who are money coaches that can help you with how you view money. So definitely encourage you guys to look at that. All right, so anyone else? We have, all right, go, yeah.
But I'm Bernina. I own and digitize a creative agency. I'm based in Albuquerque. And I'm also taking part in the Reimagining Economies apprenticeship. I'm one of the apprentices, and I've learned so much from it already within the first few weeks. And I like that you brought up like our relationship with money. And during one of our lectures, it occurred to me that it is a relationship. So like in rethinking our relationship with money, I mean, there's actually involved with money. And it just blew my mind. I was like, wow, like we're always saying like, yeah, everybody's related to us. Everything's related to us. We're all related. But like, I've never thought of like money as like having a relationship with money. And I really like that. And it kind of brings it into a positive manner for me. So yeah, thank you. This is such a great presentation.
So thank you. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for coming. My contact information is here. So if anything, you need help, feel free to reach out. We can help you with that there. And, you know, really sit down tonight and think about what legacy you want to bring, and just anchor in that we come from such a powerful, resilient lineage of amazing people that were entrepreneurs, and that's in us. We just have to see it and anchor it and, you know, align ourselves with that so we can have so much for ourselves, but also for the people that are coming after us. So thank you, everyone. Yeah.